Welcome to QuickSpeak, the English podcast that helps you improve your English skills while we explore interesting topics.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to talk about something that might surprise you.
Okay.
How disagreeing with someone can actually be good for your relationship.
Yes. It might seem strange at first.
Right.
Many people think that arguments are always bad for relationships.
Yeah.
But that's not entirely true. When disagreements are handled in a healthy way, they can actually make relationships stronger.
So it's not about avoiding disagreements completely.
Exactly. It's more about understanding the difference between a healthy disagreement and a destructive fight.
Can you explain what you mean by healthy disagreements?
Think of a healthy disagreement, like a respectful conversation.
Okay.
You and the other person have different viewpoints, and you're both trying to understand each other's perspectives.
Okay.
You listen carefully.
Right.
You speak honestly.
Yeah.
And you look for a solution that works for both of you.
So it's not about one person being right and the other person being wrong.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's about working together to find a solution that benefits both people. Now, in contrast, a destructive fight is like a battle.
Okay.
People might yell, insult each other, bring up past hurts.
Right.
It's all about winning, not about understanding.
That makes sense. So how can we make sure our disagreements are healthy and productive?
One key element is focusing on the present issue.
Oh.
Sometimes when we argue, we bring up past problems or unrelated issues.
Right.
This just makes things more complicated and difficult to resolve.
Yeah.
It's important to stay focused on the specific topic you're disagreeing on at that moment.
Okay. So stay focused on the present. What else can we do?
Another helpful technique is using I statements instead of you statements.
Okay.
For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me,"
Right.
you could say, "I feel unheard when you don't look at me while I'm talking."
I see. So it's about expressing how you feel rather than blaming the other person.
Precisely you statements can make the other person feel attacked,
Yeah.
which can lead to defensiveness and escalation. I statements help keep the conversation more open and focused on finding a solution.
That's really interesting. It seems like a simple change in wording can make a big difference in how the conversation goes. Is there anything else we can do to express ourselves more constructively?
Yes, active listening is crucial.
Okay.
When the other person is speaking, give them your full attention. Don't interrupt. Don't plan your rebuttal in your head.
Right.
Just listen to what they're saying and try to understand their perspective.
That can be challenging, especially when emotions are running high.
It is, but it's so important.
Yeah.
Active listening shows the other person that you respect them and that you're genuinely trying to understand their point of view.
And if things start to get too heated, what should we do?
If you feel yourself getting angry or overwhelmed, it's perfectly okay to take a break.
Yeah.
Say something like, "I need some time to calm down before we continue this conversation." Then step away for a few minutes, take some deep breaths,
Yeah.
and come back when you're feeling more centered.
That's good advice. Sometimes it's better to walk away for a bit than to say something you'll regret later.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
about managing your emotions and approaching the disagreement in a calm and rational way.
All of this is making me realize that healthy disagreements are really about good communication.
That's a great observation. Disagreements can actually be opportunities to strengthen your communication skills.
Wow.
By practicing active listening, expressing yourself clearly,
Yeah.
and managing your emotions, you're building valuable skills that will benefit you in all areas of your life.
So even though disagreements might feel uncomfortable in the moment,
Right.
they can actually help us grow and improve our relationships in the long run.
Absolutely. They can help us learn more about ourselves and each other.
Hmm.
And that's invaluable for building strong connections.
Okay, we've talked about staying focused, using I statements, active listening, and taking breaks when needed. What about humor? Can that play a role in disagreement?
Humor can be a powerful tool, but it's important to use it carefully.
Okay.
A well-placed bit of humor can diffuse tension and help you both see the situation in a new light.
Right.
But you don't want to use humor to make fun of the other person or to belittle their feelings.
So how can we use humor effectively during a disagreement?
Self-deprecating humor can be a good option.
Okay.
For example, if you accidentally spill your drink during an argument,
Yeah.
you could make a joke about your clumsiness instead of getting defensive.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
It shows that you're not taking yourself too seriously and that you're able to laugh at the situation.
Exactly. And sometimes finding humor in the absurdity of the situation can help you both step back and gain some perspective.
Okay, so we've covered some practical techniques for having healthy disagreements.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, is there any scientific evidence to support the idea that these kinds of disagreements can actually be good for us?
Yes, there is. Research has shown that couples who handle disagreements positively tend to have healthier levels of a hormone called cortisol.
I've heard of cortisol. Isn't that the stress hormone?
That's right. When we experience stress, our bodies release cortisol.
Uh-huh.
And it turns out that the way we handle conflict can significantly impact how much cortisol we produce.
So couples who argue constructively have less stress. That makes sense, but how does that actually benefit them?
Well, lower cortisol levels are generally associated with better overall health and even a longer lifespan.
Wow.
In other words, managing conflict well can actually be good for your physical health as well as your relationship.
Wow, that's amazing. So by learning to argue better, we can potentially live longer and healthier lives.
It's certainly a possibility and something to think about. It highlights the interconnectedness of our emotional and physical well-being.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
Uh-huh. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is.
How something as simple as changing our approach to disagreements can have such a profound impact on our well-being.
I'm starting to see disagreements in a whole new light.
Mm.
It's not about avoiding them, but about approaching them in a way that strengthens our relationships and even benefits our health.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just romantic relationships where these principles apply. They're relevant for friendships, family relationships, and even work relationships.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We encounter disagreements in all sorts of relationships throughout our lives.
And the more we practice these techniques, the more natural they'll become, and the better we'll be at navigating any conflict that comes our way.
Okay, so we've talked about the positive side of disagreements, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that there are times when disagreements might signal a deeper problem in a relationship.
You're absolutely right. While disagreements are a normal part of any relationship, they can sometimes point to underlying issues that need to be addressed.
For example, if you find yourself constantly arguing about the same things,
Right.
or if your arguments always escalate into hurtful behavior, that might be a sign of a deeper problem.
Exactly. Those kinds of patterns can indicate a breakdown in communication or a lack of respect in the relationship.
And in those situations, it's important to seek professional help.
Absolutely. A therapist can provide a safe and neutral space for you to work through your issues and learn healthy communication skills. They can help you identify the underlying patterns in your relationship and develop strategies for addressing them.
That makes sense. Sometimes an outside perspective can be really helpful.
It can be invaluable. And remember, there's no shame in seeking help. It's a sign of strength and a commitment to improving your relationship.
Speaking of strength, I think it's also important to acknowledge that sometimes even with our best efforts, relationships can reach a point where it's healthier to move on.
You're right. Sometimes, despite our best intentions and efforts to communicate effectively, relationships can become toxic or damaging to our well-being.
And in those situations, walking away might be the best option, even though it can be incredibly difficult.
It can be heartbreaking, but it's important to remember that you deserve to be in relationships that are healthy, supportive, and fulfilling.
And choosing to leave a relationship that's no longer serving you is a form of self-care and self-respect.
Absolutely. It's a way of honoring yourself and your needs. And sometimes ending a relationship, even if it's painful, can create space for new and healthier relationships to enter your life.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've covered so much ground today, from the science of cortisol to the importance of self-care and relationships.
It has been a wide-ranging discussion, and it's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
I think one of the most important takeaways is that disagreements, when approached constructively, can actually be opportunities for growth, connection, and even improved health.
That's a great summary. It's about shifting our mindset from seeing disagreements as something to be avoided to seeing them as opportunities to learn and grow both individually and as a couple.
And it's about equipping ourselves with the tools and skills to navigate those disagreements in a way that strengthens our relationships rather than weakens them.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. We're all constantly learning and growing, and that includes how we communicate and handle disagreements.
So to wrap up, what would you say are the most important things our listeners should remember from our conversation today?
I would say focus on open and honest communication, active listening, and expressing yourself constructively. And don't be afraid to seek professional help if you need it. Remember, disagreements are a normal part of life, but it's how we approach them that makes all the difference.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. I feel like I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on disagreements.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, it's not about becoming conflict-free, it's about becoming competent.
That's a great way to put it, conflict competence.
Mhm.
So for our listeners out there who are ready to become more conflict competent, what are some key takeaways they can start applying in their own lives?
Well, we've talked about a lot of helpful techniques today, but if I had to boil it down to a few essentials, I'd say focus on these three things: self-awareness, empathy, and a solution-oriented mindset.
Can you elaborate on those a little bit?
Certainly, self-awareness means paying attention to your own emotions and reactions during a disagreement. What are your triggers? What tends to make you feel defensive or angry? The more aware you are of your own patterns, the better you'll be able to manage your emotions and communicate effectively.
So it starts with understanding ourselves.
Exactly. And then empathy is about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Try to understand their perspective even if you don't agree with it. What are their needs and concerns? What are they trying to communicate?
Empathy seems like a crucial skill for navigating any kind of relationship, not just during disagreements.
You're absolutely right. It's the foundation of healthy communication and connection. And finally, a solution-oriented mindset means approaching the disagreement with the goal of finding a resolution that works for both of you.
So it's not about winning or losing, it's about working together to find common ground.
Precisely. Ask yourselves, what are we both trying to achieve here? What are some possible solutions that could address both of our needs?
It sounds like healthy disagreements are really about collaboration and problem solving.
That's a great way to think about it. And remember, it's a skill that takes practice just like any other. The more you consciously apply these principles, the more natural they'll become and the more fulfilling your relationships will be.
This has been an incredibly valuable conversation. I feel like I've gained a whole new set of tools for approaching disagreements in a healthy and productive way.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, conflict is an inevitable part of life, but it doesn't have to be destructive. By learning to navigate disagreements with skill and compassion, we can transform them into opportunities for growth and deeper connection.
That's a wonderful message to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this episode of QuickSpeak English. We hope you found this discussion helpful.
Remember, practice is key. Try incorporating some of the techniques we discussed today into your own conversations. You might be surprised at the difference it makes.
And if you'd like to explore this topic further, we have some great resources available on our website, including vocabulary lists and exercises related to today's episode. The link is in the episode description.
And of course, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more helpful tips on improving your English skills and exploring fascinating topics.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.